So, Cass, where did you start expressing yourself through music?
Through music. It's a really fun one. I feel like I was that kid who was taught piano. So my mum paid heavily for piano lessons.
Yep.
I got to grade 6 piano, I think, and I was never very good.
Okay.
So I don't think that was my forte. I think maybe I learnt music in the third row at a little Baptist church, and that's where I developed a love for worship and for singing.
Yep.
I can remember being maybe 11 campaigning to have the lead role in Cool in the Furnace in a musical. And the problem is that it was Daniel who was the lead role. So I can remember going to one of the guys and going, honestly, you need to let the girls in. Can't we rewrite this? It's just a narrator, because I wanted so much to do the tap dancing solo, and I wanted to sing the songs and be involved in the musical.
In that time as a kid, what did you feel when you were doing that stuff? I mean, why did you desperately want to do it?
I think it was just joyous. Like, it was actually, I came from a thriving church community, and music was very much at the centre of what we did. And we had all sorts of expressions, from a guy who ran like part of the Melbourne Symphony Orchestra right through to very, very contemporary musical expressions. And I think I just loved it. I think my parents have an appreciation for music. There was always music in our house. And then our church fostered a whole lot of people like Ben Fielding, Reuben Morgan, like all of those guys came from our church in Melbourne.
Wow.
And so we would get together as like the youth group, and we would rehearse and play and sing and worship, and it was part of our expression.
Wow. So how did you get into a role in a church? You now head up worship internationally for the Hillsong network of churches.
Yeah.
So how did you get a job in a church?
The grace of God. I actually worked for Shell Oil Company straight out of university.
Yep.
And I had begged my dad to let me go and study theology at a Bible college. And he told me that pastors were most effective when they actually had a real job and they could relate to real people.
Yep.
And so we fought over it. And I ended up doing a Bachelor of Business in HR and Marketing at Monash University in Melbourne. And as far as he was concerned, I was never going to work for a church. Then I married a guy who who studied at Ridley Anglican College in Melbourne, and all he wanted to do was be a pastor and do ministry. So after we first got married, we moved to Sydney and went, okay, we will come to Hillsong Church and we're going to volunteer here for 1 or 2 years, and then we're going to go plant churches. Mm-hmm. We had no idea that we would end up on staff here or that we would stay here for 25 years.
Yeah. When you married a pastor, did you think you were going to do the classic pastor's wife
No,
thing?
I was never going to do that. The biggest fight we ever had before we got married was, I can remember being at the front of my house going, I'm not going to play the organ and I'm not going to bake lamingtons. It's not what I actually feel like I'm meant to do. And he went, well, what are you meant to do? And I went, well, I wanted to go to Bible college. My dad said, no, I'm doing business. So unless the Lord calls me out of business, this is what I'm doing. Yeah. And he went, well, I'm marrying a pastor's wife. And I went, I cannot imagine what that is.
Yeah. So what was your first job in a church?
My first job in a church was running the creative administration for Donna Crouch here at Hillsong Church.
Yep. So what did you learn in that role?
That there was a lot more work in building the church than I ever imagined there was.
Yeah.
I learnt how to serve, how to lay my life down. I learnt that ministry wasn't a clock on, clock off thing at 9 a.m. and clock off at 5. I often laugh with our team because I go, my first day in the office, I think it was a Wednesday, and I came in at 5 o'clock. I said to Donna, would it be okay if I went home now? And maybe that night at 10:30, I walked out of the building and went home. Yep. And Rich went, what is this? And I went, I'm not really sure. Anyway, on the next night, I didn't realise, but it was a creative ministries night. So I got home at 10:30 again the second night. And then I hadn't realised, but I actually ended up working Saturdays and Sundays, but it was never on my initial application. Wow. So at the end of the first week, I got a good idea that I wasn't sure what I was going to expect, and every week would be different and we would roll with it.
Wow.
But I learnt that the Lord provided.
Yeah. You stepped into the creative ministries role. What's that like in a place?
This one?
Yes.
Okay, so over my journey at church, I actually started working for Donna, and then I ran our marketing department, our events department, and then I came off staff after we had our second baby. And I really felt like the Lord challenged me that raising children was actually building kingdom. And so I went, all right, well, I will lay this down, although I love it,
Yep.
and I will invest in my kids for a season. Well, after maybe 3 years, when Tom was 3, I got a phone call going, hey, Darlene is going to plant her own church and Joel and Ruben are taking over and they're not really sure what they're doing, so do you want to come and help?
Yep.
And so I came on as a contractor because I have a human resources background to help them restructure our creative department. And I thought I was going to do that for 2 months or 3 months. And maybe after 3 years, we finally formalised it and I started working back at church again.
Yep. Yep.
And then I started running the department at one point in time. Brian reorganised and restructured, and I ended up taking the helm for creative globally and locally.
Wow. Give me your take on creative ministries. I mean,
What is it?
Is it just the idea that you can sing and get creative people on a platform, or is there something? What is it about the creative ministries that's important?
It's my favourite thing in the world. I actually think that there is a deep mystery in creative ministries, that it is a beautiful way of partnering with God to reveal his hope and his imagination for the world. That is what I hope it is.
Yep.
I think it is far more than singing. I think singing and music matter so much to God.
Yep.
Like, I love that in the Bible, all the stories, when he announces his son's birth, he does it with song. And he talks about how around his throne there are angels singing, holy, holy, holy. It says that he sings over us songs of salvation. Like, singing is very much a part of it. But then I think that there is so much more that he has graced and gifted people with, that we have all these methods for communicating the message, which
Yep.
is the gospel.
Yep.
And I watch in our team fashion designers and artists and architects and writers and songwriters and stage designers and lighting directors and filmmakers all actually find their place in telling Jesus' story.
Wow.
And I feel like it's maybe a little bit like a diamond, where every expression they kind of shift a little bit and go, can you see him like this? Can you see him like this? Can you see him like this? And they show different facets and different ways
Yep.
of expressing God's glory.
How do you describe creativity? I mean, what is it about being creative?
What is it? I think the creator creates creatives. And I think creativity is how you choose to outwork your life and how you choose to tell the story.
Yeah.
And I think creative people can be everything from accountants, although I'm not sure you want a creative accountant, but it is
Yep.
far greater than the arts. It's
Yeah,
actually ways of approaching problems and looking at life that bring solution.
Because in a lot of church settings, that seems to be the creative team of the people that lead worship
Right.
through song.
Definitely.
So
And it's very narrow, right?
Yes, and you're trying to expand that?
I would love to expand it.
Yes, yes.
And I think we do. Like, we had our Worship and Creative Conference the other week, and there was a guy there who is Melvin from Song for the Mute, and he is a fashion designer, and he's just started a partnership with Adidas, and he was just talking about how God's opening doors and how he designs clothes, and as he's doing it, he senses God's glory and his goodness, and people ask him all the time, what is it about what you're doing? And so something in the beauty actually evokes response and questions.
Yeah.
And I love that.
Yeah. How do you see it coming out of people? You know, somebody that's sort of sitting in a pew somewhere, part of a small group, not doing very much. What do you look for?
I like to ask questions. And I think that I'm so aware that as a pastor, my job is to equip the saints for the work of the ministry.
Yep.
So I'm always looking for what has God put in you that actually finds its expression here? And how do we tap that, and how do we use it, and where does it fit? And I don't know that it necessarily always fits in church, but I see people using their creativity and their God-given gifts in all sorts of areas of our community and finding ways of drawing people into the story.
Yeah.
We do something called the 100-Day Creative Challenge over summer, and we set a challenge for our team where we go, look, for the next 100 days, every day, try to just do something creative, and let's see where you end up at the end of 100 days. Anyway, there was a girl in our team who had a friend in the underground church in China, and she gave her our 100-Day Creative Challenge, and she said, let's see what you could do, maybe. And so this girl had an incredible painting talent. And so she and a girlfriend got together, and for 100 days they decided to paint on canvas the stories of the Bible. And so she painted like burning bushes and the Red Sea, and she painted all sorts of things that we are really familiar with. But she said in China, because they cannot tell people, they can't evangelize, people don't know the stories. So after they'd done their 100-day creative challenge, they took all these paintings and they hung them in a gallery downtown in one of the cities. And she said they just opened up the doors of the gallery and people began to stream in off the streets. And they would just come in and they would look at these paintings and they would start crying. And she goes, they had no idea why they were so emotional at looking at the art, but they sensed something different. And she said, we had the most incredible opportunity to tell them our stories. And I go, art just made a way, and what was in them just started to come out like you're talking about, naturally.
Wow.